Hi, I'm indie fantasy author Melinda Kucsera, and I'm back with fantasy lore and more. And today we're talking to Brendan Noble, and we're talking about epic fantasy. So buckle up. This might be a long one. I like to dig into the lore, and this one has quite a bit because it's epic fantasy. So, hello, Brendan. Thank you for joining us. Tell us about your book, A Dagger in the Winds.
Well, thank you for having me on, Melinda. This book, A Dagger in the Winds, is the first book in the Frostmarked Chronicles, which is a YA Slavic young adult, for people who don't know the acronym, uh, series based on Slavic, specifically Polish and a bit of Ukrainian mythology. And it is inspired by my Polish heritage and some of the research I've done through that. And it will be a 5-book series. The first 3 books have been currently released, and the 4th is coming out at the end of the year. I'll read the blurb for the book just as a quick intro into it. And so, a warrior shrouded in darkness, a witch sworn to revenge, a winter unbounded. Wacław is an outcast, born with a curse he doesn't understand. He's hidden his power his entire life. But when the goddess of winter unleashes the darkness within him, his only hope for answers is the girl he's forbidden to see. Otylia is a witch. There's no one she hates more than the winter goddess, except her once best friend Wacław. But when she receives visions of endless blizzards and Wacław fighting by her side, she realizes he's the key to uncovering the goddess's plot. Facing monsters and magic at every turn, the pair must journey with friends and rivals alike to confront the cult of winter. But Wacław's awakened darkness grows as death consumes the living realm. To contain it, they'll have to mend their broken relationship and delve into the mysteries of the past, mysteries that could destroy the winter goddess or themselves. And so, yeah, the main story of this book in this series revolves around 2 main characters, Wacław and Otylia, who are around 16 to 17 throughout the series. And it is a story combining a lot of magic and adventure and things, but largely centers a bit around their torn relationship between, which was caused a bit by the rivalry between their parents, as well as a historic event that kind of starts at the start of the book with an event that happens when they're younger.
Let's meet them. All right, let's get to that excerpt so we can meet them.
Okay, great. So this is a prologue that happens 4 years before the start of the series. So the characters are 12. So it sounds a little bit younger than the most of the voice for the book, but it begins from Wacław's perspective. We're going to be in so much trouble. Wait for me! I scampered into the moonlit woods, clutching my wool cloak in one hand and my makeshift spear in the other. It was nothing more than a poorly sharpened stick. In my mind, though, it was a mighty weapon, capable of killing the demons and monsters lurking in the shadows. Otylia glanced back with a smirk. Her bright green eyes pierced the sea of light surrounding us as her breath fogged the air. Hurry up! Giovanna waits for no one. With a sigh, I hopped through the snow after her. Otylia was my best friend, but all she'd wanted to talk about recently had been the wild goddess. Like me, she'd turned 12 last summer, and she would soon be initiated as a Sheptuha, a channeler of the gods, capable of amazing sorcery. She wanted to be chosen by Giovanna more than anything. I worried I was going to lose her. You're so much faster into your soul form, she quipped, hopping over a log once I caught up. Her herb bag flapped against her legs as she ran, but even with the hindrance, she was quick too. Why don't you just stay in it? I have to wake up eventually, I replied. Whenever I slept, I emerged from my body in what we called my soul form. I was invisible when I wanted to be, but could interact with the world like normal. Mom and Otylia were the only ones who knew about it, and Mom had forbidden me from exploring at night. Tonight, though, was the eve of the spring equinox. With Otylia's father, High Priest Darius, out late preparing the festival's rituals, Otylia had snuck to our cottage once Mom was asleep. I had slipped out to meet her. This wasn't our first time wandering the dark woods, but tonight was supposed to be special. The story said you could see the spring gods as they traveled to kill Marzana, goddess of winter and death. Giovanna was among them, so Otylia had demanded we go. I shivered as I leaped over another log. The snow had lingered unusually late this year, but Giovanna and Eurillo, god of spring and war, would rid the world of it come morning. Part of me would miss its beauty. Where are we going? I asked, stopping as Otylia ducked deeper into the forest. Mom says there's demons farther from the trail. She stomped back to me with her nose wrinkled. Her long black hair, braided and wrapped in twine, swept behind her as she snatched my hand. It'll be fine. Mother showed me the way to a grove in autumn. We'll be able to see Giovanna flying from there. Why do you always talk about her and not Eurillo? He matters too. Furrowing her brow, she pulled me along, because he gets all the attention from Father and the tribe. Giovanna's the one that Marzana can't kill in winter. She keeps the wilds alive during Marzana's foods, but she's been forgotten by everyone except Mother and me. We wandered on for a long time. I had no idea how she knew where she was going in the darkness. Though I knew much of the forest around the village of Drzecki, to me, every tree seemed the same this far from home. And with the clouds obscuring the stars, it was impossible to tell which direction we were headed. The 8 winds whistled to the branches above when we finally reached the small clearing. Otylia grinned and twirled, swinging in the skirt of her deep green dress around her. Come on, Vashek, she said, using the affectionate little name version of my name, Wacław, that only she and my mom called me. Drop your spear and dance with me. Of course, Otilka, I replied, using the same form of her name. We danced hand in hand, spinning with the gales as they blew our hair and stung our cheeks until they turned red. Joy filled my heart. Otylia brought me the freedom I was too afraid to fight for by myself. With her, I felt like I could fly. A growl ripped through the night. I turned, placing myself between Otylia and the noise. My heart pounded as 6 pairs of ice blue eyes glared at us from the trees. Wolves. They closed in, their snarling growing louder. Vashek, don't, Otylia said with a grip on my tunic sleeve. You can't fight all of them. She was right, of course. But on the wolves' jaunt faces, I could see Marzana's winter had been hard on them. They were hungry. Both of us would die if I didn't do something. Run, I whispered. Otylia screamed as I dove for my spear. The wolves charged, but my hands found the spear's shaft. The first wolf's jaw raced towards me as I swung its tip. Wood struck flesh, and with the red streaking from its throat, the wolf yelped and fell, dead. What did I just do? The strike was just instinct. I had never wielded a real weapon before, let alone hunted something larger than a rabbit. My breath shortened as my stomach churned. So much blood. Vashek! I spun as the other wolves charged, angered by the first death. They came from every side. Their sleek white fur flashed through the shadows, with the moonlight gleaming against their fangs. There's too many. I stabbed at them as they reached me, but it wasn't enough. Teeth closed on my arms. Claws scraped at my face and chest. I collapsed, screaming for Otylia to run. Time slipped away. I prayed to Velis, god of the underworld and Navia, to bring me to paradise's peace. But death's release did not come. A blast tore across the grove, flinging me through the snow as a brilliant light shone behind my eyelids. The wolves whimpered. My whole body shook against the frigid snow. The fear too much for me to look. The wounds were to my soul form. When I awoke, the damage would remain in my physical body. So would the pain. Eventually, the grove went quiet, and I gasped as I opened my eyes. All 6 wolves lay dead, their bodies strewn amid a pool of blood that merged with snow, staining it a deep crimson. Otylia stood at the grove's edge, her fair skin glowing bright enough to illuminate the carnage, and her sharp green eyes were fixed on me. Horror filled them. What? What just happened? I stammered, struggling to a knee as I clutched my throbbing torso. My head was oozy. Blood trickled down it and dripped to the ground. Am I imagining this? Wide-eyed, Otylia stared down at her hands. I think I just channeled. A new fear struck me as I studied her. How? My best friend had channeled before being chosen by a god? What did that make her? I tried to stand, but my legs failed. I fell as Otylia rushed to my side. I don't know. Her fierce voice trembled as she tore open her herb bag and pulled out a small glade poultice. Just stay with me. Mother's healing salve should help. I took her hand as my mind began to drift. Whatever you just did, Otilka, thank you. Stay awake, Vashek. Tears welled in her eyes. Stay awake! My grip slipped. I tried to call her name, to beg for help, but tiredness washed over me. My last breath, I met her glowing eyes one last time before I fell into the black. And that's the end of the prologue. That is a major moment in the backstory of Wacław and Otylia that kind of leads to a divide because of the fact that she was doing the type of magic that's called channeling in the story that I'm sure we can talk about a bit more later. That's related to being chosen by a deity, and the fact that she was able to do this beforehand is a kind of banned type of magic, and that leads to conflict between their parents, which already don't like each other, and them being forced apart. And a rivalry ensues because of I'm trying to not avoid spoilers. So because of the situations around that.
Don't worry, I'll get you to spill some spoilers.
Oh,
Nobody's escaped.
I'll happily spoil some, but not too many.
So, since you brought up the channeling, let's talk about that. So, how many gods are there? How does one get chosen by a god? How do how does all that work?
Yeah, so I'm gonna be honest. I don't actually in my head have the exact count off the cuff because they're based. These are the gods that are based on Slavic mythology, particularly pulled from Polish and Ukrainian mythology, and a bit from all of the Slavic mythologies. There's a lot of regions involved, so I tried to find a consistent set to be able to involve in the books. But the system that is based on the term sheptucha, which is a term that means whisperer in some Slavic cultures, that is a reference to some healers that actually still today kind of follow a tradition around the healing, doing some magic around that. I wanted an alternative to the term witch because that has a different type of magic in it and connotations where it's because witchcraft was often considered demonic or that it was channeling some type of aspect that's just nature. And I wanted a magic system that was based on some of these deities and the connection to them. And so the sheptuki are that for this. And because of in real life, the sheptua is a female only kind of tradition, I wanted to try to bring that into the books as well. So all of at least at the beginning, all of the channelers are women, which means only the gods choose women compared to men, which leads to an interesting power dynamic because if only women can use magic, men can't. That can lead to different consequences.
So are women running the society there?
They're actually not because of a strict religious system kind of based off of trying to keep that under control. It is, there was aspects of power dynamics around that, but it follows a little bit of the more, the politics and it follows a little bit more of the traditional Slavic. I was trying to follow around a Dark Ages 600, 700 C period of time and how the government worked for at least the starting tribe that we see in the books. But how they become a sheptua or a channeler is through, or at the age of 12, they go through, a woman can choose to go, or a girl really at that age is choosing to go through a initiation ritual, which is discussed a bit in the books. It's a little difficult ritual and just involves them literally having to drown and then having to be either saved by a god or dying during the ritual. But anyone can only be chosen by one god at a time, and they are then brought into the service of it, and that is their job for the rest of their life, is serving the god, making sacrifices to the god, and ensuring that their altars are protected and things like that. But they also gain through that the ability to channel the abilities of that deity. So Otylia is a rare case because she is actually chosen by two deities when she finishes her initiation ritual, which also makes her an outsider yet again. She was deemed to be a witch because she was channeling before she was initiated, and then all of a sudden she is also chosen by two deities, which leads to a lot of controversy. But her two deities, for example, are Jivana, who is the goddess of the wilds and the hunt, and Mokosh, who is the great mother and kind of a goddess of divination often as well. And so she has powers related to, she does certain rituals, she can try to see into the future, even though it's indistinct and often broken and fractured, and aspects like that. And then with the nature powers, that's a lot of her combat ability you see in the book, that she can wield nature, control roots, animals, things like that. And that these sheptui are fairly rare, but they do show up throughout the book, and they're powerful forces when they are.
Oh, that's cool. And then I saw a mention of a curse. So
yeah,
let's talk about that. How did they get cursed?
Yes. And so a big part of any look into Slavic mythology in general is there is a lot of dark aspects to the stories, whether it's just darkness, dark humor, things like that. And the demons are a huge part of the aspect. For every god, there's like 15 demons, I swear, in the Slavic tales. And I had to figure out a way to kind of bring that into the story. So the first spoiler I'll say, because it's not that far into the book where you discover this, is that Wacław was cursed from a young age. He, like it says in the prologue, he has the ability to go invisible when he sleeps. So he sleeps and then he arises in what they call a soul form, which is a different body that he can choose to be invisible with or visible to whoever he chooses. But he hasn't discovered any other abilities besides that at the start of the book. But part of the storyline is he discovers a leshy in the woods, which is a nature type of demon, and who is in service to the winter goddess Marzana, who gifts him a dagger that promises to awaken his power in return for a little bit of help in the future. And I feel like you were about to say something.
I was going to ask, because you said before that so the women are the ones who become the channelers of the powers of the gods. So how is it that he has the power? Is that part of the curse, or?
So the curse is that Wacław was born as a demon with a bit of a soul of multiple souls, and so he has a mortal soul and a demonic soul that kind of are warring for control of him as a person.
Does that make him unique, or is that like a common thing that happens?
So it's fairly rare. Demons, and this is the thing in a lot of Slavic mythology, it's basically all demons. There's kind of like a divide where there's like spirits, there's some called demons, and then there's actual demons. Spirits are things that can be just created in nature and happen naturally, and people don't understand it in this book or in Slavic mythology. But in demons are people that have either typically been corrupted by living unnaturally, quote unquote, and then dying, or dying unnaturally, which often means being murdered or something like that, or committing suicide or things like that, and coming back for revenge or some aspect of like that. Wacław is a unique case, though, that he's still alive. It has been in legend that there are people like him in the past that are living demons, as they call them at the start. There's a later term in the series that kind of discovers more about that, but he is a very rare thing. The fact that he is a living person but also a demon, and the huge part of the story throughout this book and then the entire series is him warring with that different side of him, because this devoting himself a bit to the goddess of Marzana, winter and death goddess, and awakening the darkness within him is going to have ramifications, both for his relationship with Otylia and the people around him, but also for himself and being able to control the powers that he discovers. And he specifically, which again, this isn't too far into the book, I'm not spoiling a ton for you, is a demon called a planet Nik, which is also called in Serbian as Stuhach. It's a storm demon that has the ability to fly, control lightning and storms and winds and stuff. But it begins with the winds, which is kind of why the book was named what it was. He's given the dagger and he has control of the winds.
Oh, wow. So, all right. So why does Otylia hate the winter goddess? Is it and her once best friend?
Yeah. So Otylia hates the winter goddess because shortly after this event that happens in the prologue, her mother falls ill with a disease during winter of what her tribe calls Marzana's curse, which is believed to be a disease that's caused by Marzana, and it kills her mother. And so she blames the winter goddess for taking away her mother, who she really has a bad relationship with her father. So her mother was everything to her. And because shortly after in this prologue, you discover because Otylia channeled before she was allowed to, Wacław's father, who's the high chief, and Otylia's father, who's the high priest, who are kind of competing for power with the religious side versus the political side. Wacław's father saw that is a good excuse to stop his son from seeing this girl that he's been hanging out with, who's the son of his rival, or the daughter of his rival. But the problem is, what was I going to say? His father said, actually, I'm not going to go too much into that because that is end of first book. There's some aspects about why there's the divide there. Basically, Otylia thinks that Wacław just turned his back on her, but there's reasons why he didn't tell her too much more about his reasons for it because of background and story origin. And you'll discover more about it in the book.
Okay, so we have to wait to find out why they're not friends anymore.
You do see it immediately, though, that Otylia believes that Wacław betrayed him, and Wacław is banned by his father from ever seeing her or talking to her again. And what was I going to say? That his failing to do that, and Wacław being fairly awkward and introverted, failing to sometimes communicate why he's doing it, has led to this divide between him, and he honestly feels like it's better for her if he's nowhere near her and things like that. And so, but part of the story involves at the start of him realizing that when this dagger appears and his power starts to awaken, he realizes that Otylia is the only person that could possibly help him. His other alternative is her dad, who also hates him. His dad doesn't know anything about magic and would be very angry at him for choosing to do this. And so he's forced to go to her and try to rekindle the relationship that they once had. And especially, it's a big aspect for Wacław and what he's trying to do as a character is that he was actually the son of a concubine, so he's like a secondary son, really, to the High Chief. And all he's really doing, and kind of why he's pursuing this power through Marzana and trying to constantly do everything his father tells him to do, is because he's trying to prove himself as a legitimate heir, a legitimate son to his father, instead of just this guy that also had been the son of a second wife.
Wow. That's wild. So there's a lot going on in here. We've got magic, we've got gods, and we've got the mythology that surrounds them. It's wow. Now, the names of these gods, are they names that you made up, or are they like actual names you pulled from Slavic mythology?
Yeah, so all the names of the gods are ones I pulled from Slavic mythology. I typically use the Polish pronunciation of spelling of it, because like we talked about before with your last name at the start of this, that there's different spelling from every country in Eastern Europe. And so because I have the Polish heritage, I decided just to consistently try to use that. Though that leads to sometimes weird spelling, and there is a pronunciation guide in the start of the book if it is important for readers to be able to pronounce the character's name, because Wacław's name looks like Wacław and stuff like that.
That's what I thought it was, and you kept pronouncing it differently, and I was trying to catch the pronunciation, but because I'm looking at your blurb and I see one thing and I'm hearing something different, and my brain is like, a car accident. The two,
yes. Yeah, so I made an interesting choice that I don't know how much I regret later. Basically, only the A's in his name are pronounced the same.
Okay, so let's get a really quick pronunciation lesson, because I keep missing the way you're pronouncing his name. Like, I see it spelled Waclaw, and that's the pronunciation is very different.
Yeah, Polish is such a weird language. So W's in Polish are pronounced like these. The A is an A. The C is pronounced as a TS. Don't know how that happened. But the L with a line through it, I haven't figured out what that's actually called. I tried to look it up. It's just called L with a line through it. And then the last one. So it's Va with the VA. The C if the line through it is W. I think I don't remember if I actually said that. So it's Wacław.
Wacław.
Yep.
Okay, I got it now. Because Otylia's name doesn't really change all that much. Like, it's pretty.
Yeah, no, Otylia's is much more consistent.
So you're regretting some of your choices there?
Yeah, at least I'm not putting apostrophes in people's name. I'd honestly say Wacław's name is probably one of the most complicated in the entire book, and I don't know why I made it the main character. It's still only 2 syllables at least. But.
Yeah, but you did that to confuse yourself. possibly
And
others.
honestly, I was about halfway through writing the first book when I just realized I was pronouncing the name wrong myself.
Oh, wow. See, I always stick with phonetic names. Everything is phonetic. It's just, I have one name that's not, but everything is phonetic. I was like, I need to make it easy on people because I'm probably not going to remember how to pronounce these things either. So they need to look like they sound. It's just for my own sanity.
Yeah, and that is why I have the pronunciation guide in the front, because we have Wacław's name, but also the gods have a weird spelling. A lot of them are fairly readable, like Marzana or Giovanna, but how you pronounce that is slightly different with a Polish pronunciation versus. And I don't really care if anyone wants to walk up to me and call him Wacław or Giovanna or Wana or whatever. I'm not going to be offended.
You'll know who they're talking about.
I read plenty of books, and I think I probably butcher the characters' names, even if they're not a super ethnic spelling. So I believe readers have the ability to see a character and pronounce a character however they want.
And if you're not sure, they just go with like whatever that comes to mind. I've read a few books where I could not. There was too many crazy letters and apostrophes, and I was like, you know what? I'm just going to call him Sam.
Yep.
I can't. I don't want to keep I don't want to waste time every time I come to their name trying to figure out how the heck you pronounce this thing. They're Sam from now on, so I can keep reading.
And honestly, it makes it easier for reading. I did it in first person, so half the time Wacław is talking, he's saying I.
That's see, so you did help readers out there. They don't have to figure out his name too often. But in the Slavic languages, though, there's all sorts of diminutives. And
I mentioned that with because in the Slavic languages you kind of have like a little name. I think it's kind of the diminutive. I didn't want to put diminutive in the word book because I assume most people wouldn't know what that word means. But Wacław goes to Waszek and Otylia goes to Otylka, which honestly is just, again, Otylia being much more simple, because it's with women, it's normally just adding KA at the end. With guys, it gets interesting.
It's whatever they feel like. Sometimes I feel like that's what it is. They just drew a circle on the ground, threw some letters in the air, and like, that's your diminutive.
Yep, and sometimes those letters ended up with accents over them.
Like I said, circle, throw things in the air, whatever lands in the circle, that is your diminutive.
Honestly, I feel like that's how some authors make names anyway.
I wouldn't be surprised. I can make these comments about Slavic names because like my family is actually, half of my family is actually from Hungary, so we have
and Hungarians have some wild names.
Oh yeah. I got lucky. I didn't get anything too wild. My mom's Italian, and my grandmother's name was Carmela, and a lot of people called her Melinda as a nickname, so that's how I got my name. So I didn't get anything wild, but my dad had some wild ones, had some zingers lined up because he's Hungarian. So
nice.
I escaped. I dodged that bullet. They're not listening, so I can say that.
This is the episode they'll listen to now, and they will hear that.
Oh God, don't curse me. I love you, Mom and Dad, if you're listening, or if any of my relatives happen to be listening. I do feel like I've had a couple of people on here so far who have written epic fantasy books, or just fantasy books in general, that have pulled from Slavic mythology. I gotta feel like the universe is saying that I should actually do this, because that's half my ethnic background.
Yeah, and especially, honestly, Hungarian has a huge subset. Like, it's kind of on the border where somewhat Slavic, somewhat not, where there's a huge, like, uniqueness that's even beyond, like, the Polish and other things. So you would have, like, a fairly interesting, because what I've read with Hungarian stuff is fascinating. And I feel like I completely forgot to mention this earlier with my research into Slavic stuff.
Oh, go ahead and mention it now.
If you're interested in Slavic mythology, whether you like if you want to read the books or not, that's totally up to you. But on my website, brendan-noble.com, or my YouTube, Brendan Noble Author, I talk about, I have, I think, almost like 75 at least videos and posts about different Slavic demons, gods, how Slavic mythology sees different animals and things like that. So if you're interested in Slavic mythology at all, my goal was to try to take a lot of things that I could only find in Polish, Russian, Ukrainian, whatever, in some of these languages, and put it in a English, easy to read kind of format that's not super in depth, but it gives you enough to start with if you want to go further from there. And that was because I figured I had like so many pages of research for this book and this series, because I wanted it to feel authentic, because there's some of those times people say, I'm going to write on about mythology, and then they kind of just do the surface level. I didn't want to do that. And so I decided I wanted to share it beyond just writing my book. I wanted to say, how can I take all these things I learned and then share the mythology, both in nonfiction ideas and fiction. Some people had said I should write a nonfiction book, but I think I don't think I have the patience for that.
That's really cool that you have all those resources. I'd have to research all this. I don't know much about the Hungarian side of the family. I know a lot more about the Italian side of the family.
Yeah, and that's the problem about a lot of the Eastern European stuff is because the USSR kind of squashed a lot of those old traditions with the fall of the USSR, and kind of now over the last few decades, there's been a real resurgence of it. Like a lot of the new fantasy that has either come from the Slavic countries themselves, like The Witcher or different aspects of like that, has all come recently, and a lot of art. And there's some amazing artists out there that are doing Slavic stuff too. And it's fascinating to see that resurgence, but almost be a little bit of a part of it overseas. And so, yeah, it's fascinating to see people rediscovering a lot of these aspects. And like Hungarian, and a lot of them, because they're not in English because there were so many of these things that are just being reread. They were oral traditions, and now they're finally being written down. And so, yeah, it's fun to be a part of that. And I'm glad I started doing this because I couldn't find other authors that had done too much Slavic stuff. And now I'm glad to discover them along the way, because we're all kind of taking a lot of the same stories and applying them in different ways. Because some take the more Russian approach, some take the more Polish approach. But how you apply it can be more of the low fantasy, high fantasy, and no two people are going to write the same thing. So
no, that's the cool thing. Even if we all use the same tropes, we'd all come up with wildly different stories. But you said something interesting. You said there's the Russian approach or the Polish approach. Can you speak a little more about what exactly that means? Is that just in the naming, or in the gods that they're using, or what exactly does that mean by these different ethnic approaches?
Yeah, I can't go too much into it because, again, I haven't found too much of it in English.
Yeah,
but
just on the surface.
A lot of the popular Slavic tales that that are available kind of in English are often based off of the Russian type of mythology, such as the Bear and the Nightingale, and then every other one is now escaping
Baba Yaga.
my mind because, but Baba Yaga she's actually in the Polish stuff too. But what I mean is, Bear and the Nightingale is like a mainstream fantasy novel now, and so there's other ones that are, again, all escaping my head, that are the more popular ones that are often that Russian one. And a lot of times there is a common appeal to those. It is very hard to say specifically what it is, but there's often that focus on, I would say there's threads through Russian literature in general that often are related to heavy winter. Mine has that too, but the bear and things like that, and the forest and the darkness that's in the forest specifically. I focused a little bit more on the deity side of things, but a lot of the Russian literature and some of these other ones seem to focus on, if there's a deity, it's almost like a tutelary deity, where they're like a deity over like a specific area. But yeah, that's the Russian one. The Polish one, again, I haven't found a ton besides the couple I heard from your recent podcast, and then obviously The Witcher. But The Witcher only really takes some of the demons and often changes them a little bit, so it's not completely the same, but there are like relations there. So what I mean to say is that there's different names, but there's beyond the names, these deities take on a little bit of a different importance to each culture depending on their region. So you think about the Serbians and the Croatians. I shouldn't mention those two people in the same sentence because I've been a lot of people mad at me for that. But the being in the mountains and related very close to the water, and how there's a lot of the storm deities that I actually and the storm demon, the planet Nick, that's the Polish version of a Serbian demon. A lot of these are the storm aspects take a huge precedence down there. They don't really care much about what they call Marana instead of Marzana with the winter, because it's not as harsh in a lot of that area of the world. You look at Poles and Russians, winter is obviously a much more present threat. So you find the drowning of the Marzana ritual, which is a huge part of this start of this book. It's actually the entire first part is called the drowning of Marzana, which is a tradition where they take a effigy of the goddess Marzana and then they burn her and then they drown her in the river as kind of a bye to winter, spring's coming. And they still sometimes do this as school field trips today in Poland, which is kind of fun.
Oh, that's wild.
Yeah, so each of these different countries has like a different focus. There are some of the Russian deities are it's hard to say as a baseline, but what I've seen is they almost seem to focus a little bit more on this old wiser figure, whether it's Svarog or Rod or whoever you want to call some of these elder figures. There's a huge emphasis on that, and then this hero through the tale of whether it's Ivan. Okay, it's Ivan in basically all of them.
Why am I not surprised?
Yeah, you'd be surprised. Every single tale, and I saw a Spider-Man meme like where they're all pointing at each other, and it just says Ivan, Vasya, and all like the different names they call Ivan in all the Russian tales. But you see it a little bit differently in each of the countries, which is kind of fun. But in the Polish one, you find this big divide. I think because seasonality, and Poland doesn't have quite as hard of a winter as some parts of Russia. Between the two characters, there's every country does this differently, and the regions does it differently. I chose Givana and Marzana as the two names, but there's this idea of two sisters kind of controlling the seasons, and then Urilo sometimes in there as well, and how the divide happened between them. That kind of comes from the Polish vision. So again, a lot of these things kind of pull from different countries. I tried to combine some of them with a focus on the Polish one, because it's hard to be all encompassing, but I wanted to make sure that there are roots in all the traditions as possible. You mentioned Baba Yaga. Baba Yaga's in all of them. Everyone knows Baba Yaga. Yeah. If you don't know Baba Yaga, look up Baba Yaga. She's fun. She is a woman.
You can't avoid her, because there was a bunch of urban fantasy books where she just sort of popped up in the was this the 2010s, maybe a little bit earlier than that.
She's the Slavic boogeyman.
Like, yeah. Oh yeah.
She and how can you not include her? I mean, people would ask, when is she going to show up in your series? She doesn't show up till book 4 in my series, because I really wanted to save her for like a crucial moment. But she has this. To have this woman who is a witch of the wild, and again, having Givana, the goddess of the wild, is important because nature is such a big theme in Slavic mythology, and I wanted to capture a little bit of that. The demon aspect of demons aren't necessarily all evil, even though they're called demons, because there's ones that didn't do anything wrong in life, they were just killed unnaturally and things like that. That's a huge part of the book. But witches aren't necessarily evil either, even if they're perceived as it. They just don't, at least in my book, they don't channel specifically a deity. They channel nature. They challenge different forces, and through their own power instead of a deity's power. And there's danger to that, because I have a kind of an energy system I call life force that's based through the Slavic word Zitya, which is kind of actually taken from Lithuanian and Proto-Slavic. I tried to use a lot of the magic words from Proto-Slavic when possible, because it was kind of this ancient language. But while a deity can help you by using some of their Zitya to help you cast spells, a witch is using her own Zitya, which is dangerous if you don't know how to control that, because you could literally kill yourself.
So do they give you a lot of, you said it was called Vitya? So do the gods give you a lot of that, or like they just give you a little and they're like, yeah, you make do with that. You want more, supplement it yourself.
So this is, it's entirely up to the god, how much they like you, how much they like what you're doing. And sometimes it doesn't even be necessarily an active part of the god's thing. It's just, but they perceive what you're doing, is it in line with what they want? If so, they'll help you much more. The person always has to carry some expenditure of the Zychia, so they will run out of energy eventually, no matter how minor the spells they're doing. But the god takes a significant part of that, because especially the massive using of, like, for example, Otylia's nature magic, controlling groups of trees to entangle people and then stab them with branches. That takes a lot of manipulation of multiple things. It should be an extra cost to that. And that was one thing I wanted to make sure in the series is there's a cost to magic. So even though her deity is taking some of that, you have to shoulder some of that burden as well.
So wait, does the deity also pay a cost for this?
Yes. And so Zychia is, and part of the idea is that the entire point of Sheptuhi and these channelers is, one, to protect the god's altars, but what the altars are for is making sacrifices to the god, which is giving the god Zychia from the animal or grain or whatever that was sacrificed.
Oh, I see, to replenish what they made.
So it's almost like an economic
stockpile. Yeah,
it's a cycle. The gods give both to the channelers, but also giving gifts as, like, responses to prayers and things like that. But they also need to receive, otherwise they kind of diminish in power. And this is the perception Otylia has with Giovanna, as she says kind of in the prologue. Everyone worships Arillo as the spring god, but Giovanna's kind of the forgotten wild goddess. And so she is a little bit less influenced because of that. And Otylia is actually her only channeler. And so she has less sacrifices, she has less Zychia, she has less of a prominence from that. And it's not directly referenced in the book, but I have this background thought around it that it affects Otylia's channeling because of this kind of economic aspect of it. There's not as much for the goddess to give, so she has to give more of herself to be able to do the channeling.
Oh, that's cool. I like that there's a whole system around it. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, because these gods aren't omniscient, they're not omnipotent. They need it's always this thing I think fantasy authors struggle with, of, like, when you have gods, are they infinite? Are they not? How do they work it into it? And sometimes there's a distance to it. But I wanted to make sure, and it's explored more throughout the series, this understanding of the gods are pretty flawed in some of their own ways, kind of like you say in the Greek mythology, but they need the people, and there's an incentive for them to help people because they get something in return. And so it's a give and take. And so you can have a benevolent god, or perceived benevolent god, that give a good harvest and things like that, but then you give some of the harvest back, so they get the Zychia from that. Or the goddess of the hunt with Giovanna, there might be an animal sacrifice, which is like honoring her. But then you have a malevolent goddess, or perceived malevolent goddess. I say perceived because how people perceive the gods obviously is different depending on who they are. From Marzana's aspect of the goddess of death, if someone sacrifices a person to her, the person also has Zychia as a living being, and so they can do that as well. But there's obviously stigma around sacrificing people.
Oh, wow. Yeah, you're right though. Like every fantasy author has to figure out like what they're gonna do with their gods. I limited mine because it's more fun if they can only do like a few things, and if you call on them, they may not be able to help in the situation because they don't have the right magic for it. That's just something I love playing with. Is like we have skills, but they're not the right skills for the job. So how do we improvise so we can solve the problem, save the world, whatever we're doing in the book.
Right, and a large part of a lot of some of the Slavic mythology is a focus on balance and not necessarily good and evil duality, but you have, for example, the two biggest well-known ones in Slavic mythology are Perun, who's the god of thunder, and then you have Veles, who's the god of the underworld, but it's also order and chaos. But there's no evil and good. Even Marzana has some respect from even not her cult, but just people in general, understanding that winter is needed for the rebirth of the seasons and things like that. And so you have Giovanna and Marzana, you have Perun and Valus, and these not only this opposition between the two, even though that they're fighting each other because of their differences, it leads to a forced inaction on other things. So if Marzana is getting out of control, why isn't Perun getting involved? Well, because if he gets involved, Valus will get involved, and that can cause problems. And so you have all these different, both the powers, like you said, they're limited, and so they have to choose where they choose to spend that energy. Am I going to spend it on things that are entirely in my interest and my worshipper's interest, and that's going to give me more position and make me more powerful? Or am I going to spend it on this other issue that is one of my kids is fighting one of my other kids, and I don't want to get involved in that.
Usually I have one goddess who has quite a few children. She's been around for like, thousands and thousands of years. Right. Even if you only have a kid a century, you eventually you start to rack up quite a family, and if they have problems, she just grounds them. She's the goddess of fate, so she just rewrites their fate so they can't go anywhere for a few days and keep them out of her hair.
That's fun.
She's so fun to write about. She's one of my favorite characters.
And yeah, it's fun to see, that those dynamics between whether it's deities and because I have the dynamics between the deities, like I said, with a lot of them. There's also the separation between people and deities, but then you also have demons, and which are sometimes worshipped by some cults as deities in certain parts of Slavic mythology. But so that's a little bit in the book sometimes too. It's like, is a super powerful person a god, or how does that define? Are the spirit a god over an area? And so you have all of these different interwebs of powers that create a fun, and this is something I like in fantasy books as well, not just having this is the good magic, this is the bad magic. Everything in it can be used for good or evil. Obviously there are dark creations like Charnabog, the literal dark god, I portray as a three-headed dragon. But darkness in its aspect still is not evil in Slavic mythology, because a lot of Slavic mythology does not have this understanding of good and evil. It just has the natural way of the balance of things, and that being out of whack, and the problem of being out of whack. And it's fun to see this conflict between a deity in theory could lose to one of these other powers. They're probably not going to lose to the peasant dude with a stick, but you get enough demons together or enough spirits together, they could win the fight. They
do the gods team up ever? Because like in my fantasy world, they can team up. Like they can decide that they, hey, I want to do this thing, but I don't have all the skills needed. I can recruit some of these other gods to help me. And if they all decide to do it, in my world, I let them do it.
Yeah, for sure. One of the spring equinox is kind of the focus at the start of the book. Both the prologue takes place in the spring equinox, and 4 years later, the actual book starts at the spring equinox 4 years later. And this is the focus of the equinoxes, with this divide between Giovanna and Eurylo in spring, and then Marzana in the winter and autumn. Is at these times, it's the job of the other group to kill the other one and start the cycle over again. The myth, which is addressed pretty early in the book, is that Eurylo and Marzana used to be married. Nature was great, but there was no winter, there was no summer. It was just nature was as it should be. Eurylo cheated on Marzana. Marzana got mad for obvious reasons, killed him, and then became the goddess of winter and death because of that. And so every year they repeat the cycle of Giovanna and helping Eurylo kill Marzana, because I have this dynamic. I was trying to understand, take the myth and kind of bring it into how the magic works, that Eurylo and Marzana, or any of these opposed forces, are often weakened by the other one's presence, because it's hard to have a strength of your opposite power when you're near the other person. Of that, it almost negates itself. So they need help. So they often would bring the wind god Stribog along, that would carry Eurylo and Giovanna to Marzana to do the killing. But through dynamics, the gods are lazy. They've been around for thousands of years. You gotta get bored doing the same thing every year. Streamog stops helping, makes it harder to kill Marzana, leads to potentially endless winter.
Oh wow! So go on.
Good.
No, I was going to say in the book, speaking of winter, you talk about there's this cult of winter, and there's a goddess's plot that someone's trying to do something. I guess end the world, because that's usually what we're doing in a fantasy book.
Yeah. So the cult of winter is there's a big aspect of I mentioned the ship Tui. They go through this initiation. You don't get to choose which god saves you. And so, in some cases, you're saved by Marzana, and that is banned by the tribe because of instances of people worshiping the goddess of death, and the cult of her sacrificing people doesn't go down very well. And so they're exiled to this distant place called the Mangled Woods. But by exiling all these powerful, channelers, as well as anyone else that worships the goddess, you create a cult in the crazy wooded place that may or may not be connected to Baba Yaga. And you have that's where this aspect comes along. There's cults around a lot of the deities, but Marzana's is the significant threat because they're trying to ensure that she survives beyond her allotted time. So when the equinox passes, all of a sudden it seems like winter stays around longer than it should. What are the ramifications of that? And why? And even though Otylia is a channeler of Giovanna, she doesn't understand quite why it's happening. And then all of a sudden Giovanna stops responding to her and things like that. So there's this ongoing story of, the powers of the deities, the limitations of it, them helping each other or working against each other. I tried to stay true to the myths when possible, or I twisted them to my own, usage. But yeah, there's that relationship. And sometimes the gods need to use mortals, but they don't want the mortals to know that they are a god. So shape-shifting is a huge part of Slavic mythology. If you're an urban fantasy author and you want to do shape-shifting, Slavic mythology is the shifter stuff. Slavic mythology's got a great usage of that. Dragon shapeshift, demons shapeshift, god shapeshift, everyone shapeshifts. No one's who you think. And so it gives
nobody wants to be in their skin as themselves.
Right. And so, or at least they don't want you to think that that's them. And so there's manipulations that potentially happen with that. I will not spoil anything, but there are manipulations throughout the series. Because every god, again, has their own interests, whether they're related to helping Marzana, stopping Marzana, or not related to it at all, and they want whatever there are, their own control over one of the three realms, with the realm of the gods, the realm of the living, or the realm of the dead.
This is wild. So, is there anything else you want to say about Dagger in the Winds?
I would say that marketing-wise, the first book is currently free if you want to pick it up on ebook form. The second book is only 99 cents, so you can get 1,000 pages of reading for 99 cents. It's a pretty good deal in my opinion.
That's pretty cool.
But I would say that this writing the series has been a really fun adventure of both studying the mythology and my heritage around it, and also learning a lot about writing fantasy. This is my second series. My first series was a dystopian series called The Prism Files. I decided I wanted to write fantasy, and so I've discovered a lot about writing fantasy throughout the series, and I think I started really well, and I've continued to grow throughout it, and it's been fun to learn along the way and grow with the characters along the way, and kind of discover how having very complex magic systems and powers and dynamics and betrayals affects the people, because throughout the series, with it being 5 books, that's around 2,500 pages. So that's a lot of time for the characters to be able to evolve and change, and it's fun because the characters are really the heart of the story. You can have great magic, you can have cool gods and these dynamics, but if you don't have characters who grow, change, and learn along the way, you don't have anything. So it's been fun to be able to do that, and I've enjoyed that.
Sometimes it's hard to get characters to grow, change along the way. Sometimes they resist all attempts at that.
That's the plot. Then they're resisting, and so And some people don't change, and that can be a plot in itself. Just the flat character arc. So
yeah, if you're a fan of my books, you know which character is like refusing to change. But in the more recent books, they're slowly changing. It's slowly happening. There's only so much you can make them do in the confines of a book, or at least that I can make them do. I'm not one of those lucky authors who can get them to do anything.
That's it, and people don't realize that when you're, they sometimes like authors are crazy. You're the person that's writing it when they say like the character won't cooperate. It's like no,
I'm just
I'm writing it, but like there is what the plot I think should happen, but if it doesn't follow, if the character, it doesn't work for the character, like the character's motivations, their personality does not work like that. It is quite literally wrong for me to write it that way because it's not what should happen in the story. And so you're right. It's that struggle of I want you to do this thing, but you're not going to do this thing. So now you have to spend pages doing this. I have a lot of fun. I mean, the main characters, sometimes have a lot of that change, but almost have the most fun with the side characters. There's a lot of
because they don't have to carry the main plot. They can be. I have fun with them too. Yeah. They can be doing cool stuff over here that has nothing to do with the main plot, and that's cool because it's epic fantasy. We can have subplots. They can do all this cool stuff over here. We can make the main character, handle the reason you opened the book up, all the stuff in the blurb.
But then I don't find it offensive at all when someone tells me at the fair, like a lot of people who read my series go like, Narcissus is my favorite character or something like that. These are side characters who I haven't even mentioned because they have a part in the role, but they're like part of the traveling group. And that's the fun of like, you have rivals turned friends or friends turned rivals. And just being able to have those where you're right, they don't have to carry the plot. Because sometimes, the personality matters, but sometimes the main character has to do something. They have to kill the bad guy. The side character, because I have Wacław with this, wind powers and lots of magic, and Otylia with her different magic abilities and the evolving of that. But then you have this traveling group of people that go with them that have like bow and arrows and spears. It's like, how does that play a role? And when you're fighting these vast enemies, how does the normal person interpret the events? And it's almost grounding to be able to use those people and have whether the comedic relief or the shoulder to cry on or the inspiring speech for the friend. It's always fun to have that real person to be like, this shit's crazy.
Yeah, or that person telling them like, you messed up, man. That you shouldn't have done it. Or giving them the lecture, the talk, or whatever. Yeah.
Because sometimes it's fun to have like Wacław and Otylia do that sometimes, but it's also nice to have them have other people.
Yeah,
I want them to be themselves. Because I feel like the relationship and everything is part of the book, and it's a key aspect in the book. But too often I feel like in some of these stories that's the entire thing, and they can't be the people by themselves. I want them to also have friends. They can be a person. But there's also the aspect of when you're together, you're like one thing, and when you're apart, you're like different thing. So
no, and that's real life. That's how real people are. So that's great that you're bringing that sort of reality into it. But to speak to like some of the books where it is all about the relationship, like romance is a whole different animal. It is all about the relationship,
and that is the genre. So I can't blame it.
No, and you don't. And the point of the romance is to focus on just those two people and their relationship together. And in some, you do get them also separately with other people, but usually it's because they're going to be featured in another book, not necessarily to show how these people are outside of that. I think that's the real distinction between like romantic fiction and like fantasy or any sort of genre where the romance is not the focus. It's important and part of it, but then you get to see more of how these people are in other situations with other people, because the relationship is important, but they're also a character carrying the plot of the book, and the plot of the book and the relationship may not be going along the same course sometimes.
Yep. And then also my favorite scenes with any character. I love writing the epic fight scenes. They can be fighting a dragon, they can be fighting a god. Cool stuff. Magic, great. I love it when you get a character sitting around the campfire with a friend, a rival, whatever, and they're talking about how crazy everything is, and often talking about something that's not related to the plot, but they need that because not everything in your life, even though the world could be ending, is about that. You need to be able to talk about life and things like that. And so that's fun to be able to say you have the characters together when they're fighting, when they're doing really cool things, but also them being that real character of saying, I'm tired. Like,
yeah,
I've been
letting their
doing
hair
this.
down.
Yeah, I've been doing this for way too long already. It feels like it's been forever, but it's been a month. And like, how am I going to keep doing this? Which it just shows that I think the struggle is real. Wow, I didn't mean to use that in the millennial term of the struggle is real, but it is the struggle is real for the character. They're actually going through it instead of just the I can't pull, like the character from a cool spy movie that can shoot 80 people in the head and go through it and be a badass the whole time, but never feel any pain.
Yeah,
but they're not feeling any pain about it. That's not real. There's
John Wick is not real. I hate to break it to all of you, but that is not real. You can't fall down flights of stairs and be fine, and get hit by a car and get up and walk away.
You have 80 bullets in one clip.
Yeah, I've been hit by a car. You don't get up and walk away from that, even if you don't get hit that hard.
No,
you're just, the human body is not made that way.
You're telling me you can jump off a 10-story building, fall on a car, break the windshield, get up and keep running after the bad guys? What?
No, if a real person did that, they'd be dead. Unless they're wearing like body armor, and even then, like, I still think they'd be hurting. They might be limping away.
That's the nice thing about fantasy. I can say this person has magical abilities, so it's fine.
Yeah. No, that's definitely a saving grace. But it's been fantastic talking to you. So you said there's going to be 5 books in this series. Are you going to write any other books in this world?
So my plan, I don't currently plan to. I'm actually planning to move to adult fantasy with my next series, which will be more of a flintlock political fantasy. But yeah, I haven't counted out never returning to it or not. I've kind of loved the story, but I've also tried to bring, that's part of why it's 5 books, because I wanted to bring in as many of the stories into it as I could with both the main plot, but also different Slavic side tales kind of showing up. There's also 2 novellas. You can get The Rider in the Night free if you join my newsletter, which is the prequel novella. And then there's The Lady of Relico, which is like a book 3.5, which also confronts another Slavic side novella or side story that takes place in the same world. So those are my attempts to kind of say, these are kind of attached to the main story. They influence things that are happening in the world, but they're not the main characters, because I did want to write some other things inside the world as well. I think with book 5, I will probably be done with the world, not as in like, oh, I'm sick of this, but I think I will have told the story I want to tell, and I will be moving on from that.
Okay.
And I hope it will be a good conclusion for people with that.
I admire people who can do that. Like, I've written 21 books in the same world, and there's still so many different stories to tell, so much more I want to reveal about the world, that I could probably write like at least 20 more. So yeah, I'm always intrigued by authors who can be like, nope, I wrote 3 or 4 books in this. Nope, I'm done. I'm moving on to something else, as I can't seem to do that.
I have the thing of, I think, especially since I had plotted out my next series, I have the like new shiny thing I'm looking forward to.
I see.
And I've been started working on that. So it's not like I'm sick of this old thing. It's like I
have shiny object syndrome.
Yeah, I was planning, but there's also the thing of, all right, I've spent 2,500 words in it, but this one intended to have one story in it. My next series, I think I'm probably going to do something like that. If what you're doing, there will probably be a bunch of interconnected series, because I've got like 15 realms that all interact. And,
I just keep finding more like shiny objects and like plot bunnies.
But it's great that there's shiny objects in that world.
There's just so many things. There's so many aspects. I'm plotting on a military fantasy book in there. Yep. There's just so many. I didn't realize the world was that vast until I started looking into it. And I still love my Chris Trigger series. I still love Sard and his family and his friends, and they're still there. But there's so many so many gods. There's so many other stories that he's tripped over them. Like, I really want to know more about this?
Yep.
You know, this.
And
why is this there in that world? Well, I need information. This is weird, and I want to know. You know, that kind of situation.
Yeah, that's the big thing about fantasy is that we are. I mean, any book really, but I think fantasy largely we're storytellers from this world that we kind of created from scratch. And everything you do, I need a side character to attach to this, and then they disappear, and you kind of go, "Where did they go? I don't know. I didn't.
What were they doing
that,
before? Like, I have this scene where like they were just supposed to summon the one thing that they needed to resolve their problem, and suddenly like 4 gods that I didn't know like this world even had showed up, and I'm like, wait, whoa, stop the presses. Who are these people? Why are they?
What did I just do?
What were they doing before they were here? And it was so cool. I was like, okay, I have no idea where this is now going, and I need to figure this out. But it's so cool that like I don't want to remove it. I don't want to go back to the idea that I had because this is so much cooler, and I'm so confused right now that I love it.
Yeah.
So
and that's the magic. I for this series, I'm a discovery writer, and so I very vague idea of where I'm going. And basically now I know where this whole series is going. I say it's like throwing a football. By the time it's by like the arc of book 3, you kind of know where it's going to land. But at the start, I had no idea exactly where it was going.
I mean, I know where I want to get to. I just can't seem to get the characters to go there. I'm trying. There's this one thing that I want my one particular main character starting to do, but you read any Cursebreaker book, I cannot get him to do anything. He's dealing with other things that I didn't realize we were going to have to deal with.
My next series, I my first time plotting, and I'm glad I've done it because I have 6 POV characters in that series.
Oh wow!
It's being able to 2 main, and then like some other ones that will tell like side stories that tie into it. But it's I was like, if I discovered this, I would have torn my hair out just on the timeline, let alone trying to make everything work. But the problem is, you still have that discovery writer part of you where you go, I want them to do this, but it would put them 2 days away, and I need them there.
Yeah, and then you end up going, you know what? Screw it. I'm going to do it anyways, and we'll just add another book to get from, because now we're way over in left field. We'll do this cool thing, then we'll just add another book in between where we were supposed to be to get us from here to there, and they'll do something cool in here. I don't know what it is, but we'll do it. And then you keep getting further and further from the thing you wanted, and you're like, okay, next book we'll get to it. Next book, and it just becomes next book and next book and next book, and then you're like,
it's about the journey.
Are we ever going to get there, guys? We're I'm getting him back on track. It's slow, but I'm getting him back on track.
And it can work for certain characters. Their entire thing could be, I don't want to do that quest. They want to do the side quest.
Well, I mean, it's not that he doesn't want to do it. It's that they can't. He's cursed, but they can't tell him what the curse is, because the nature of the way curses work in the world that I created is that, like, if you don't know about the curse, you don't necessarily, the curse has no power over you. If you know about it, because basically a curse is a lie. You're bound to a lie. But if you don't know, you could make a different decision, and the curse may not affect you. You might go left instead of right and go off on a different path where you never intersect the curse. You still have free will. If you know that you are cursed and you know that you are bound to this lie, when you come to that decision point where you no longer have that option to not do the thing that's going to send you down the cursed path, disappears, because you're in your mind, you're like, I'm cursed, I have to do this. And you end up doing it. It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. So they've tried this in the past, because there have been other people who had the same curse, and they tried telling them, and it always goes badly. And he's their last chance. They don't know of anybody else who has this curse, and they don't know if anyone else will. His son is not cursed. He doesn't carry the curse. So they're like, okay, so the curse ends with him. So he's the one who's got to do this, but we can't tell him. So he has no way of knowing like what is going on that he needs to go do. He doesn't know what he needs to do. He's the chosen
one, and no one can tell him he's the chosen one.
That's the thing. That's the thing. He is the chosen one, but no one can tell him. And he's bound to this place by promises that he made, because promises are binding. That you promise someone something, you're making that your truth. So he cannot leave the underground city where he lives, because he promised that he would not. And in order to break the curse, he has to leave that. So I'm trying to get him to get the guy who promised to like retract the promise, or let him free him from that. But he doesn't want to deal with that guy because he's afraid that he will just end up promising away more of his life. Like, he has legitimate like fears, and so I'm trying to get him to get out of that situation, but he's resisting. He doesn't want to deal with the guy, and I can't come up with a logical way to make him, because he just really doesn't want to do it.
I love that. Yeah, there's the fun aspect of, you're right, the characters do something, or like the world has done something, and now you have to figure out your way around what you've made happen. I have later in the series, Otylia has, I'll avoid the spoiler aspect of it. She's made some pacts with certain beings, whether gods or other things, and to accomplish what they need to do, you have to undo or fulfill the pact, which can lead to undesirable results. So you have almost like half a book devoted to that. But they're also important aspects of the story, even if it's, at first it's like, we want to get from A to B, but we need to go to C to get to B.
That's where I'm at. But I've got it to the point where he wants something else really badly, and to get that something else, he needs to get released from those other promises. Okay. So he's now he's in the, okay, I need to do this thing. How do I do this thing to maximize my chances of success? But he's a very powerful mage, so he's attracting monsters and other problems. So he has to deal with those while he's trying to figure out, how do I present the strongest case and actually like succeed and get this person to release me from my promises. Yeah, that's cool. They don't want to. They want to keep having access to this very powerful person, because you're basically like under their influence. Like, they want to keep having a mage at their beck and call who can move mountains. Like, I would too. I totally understand from the point of view of the Lord of the Mountain, who he promised that he would stay there and he would work for. I totally understand why that guy would never let him go, ever.
And that's the thing. Even the villain has, or I don't know if it's the villain.
He's not a villain.
He's a person who's opposed to you in some ways, or their interests. They need to have just as important that like thing. And so he wants to hold him there, which contracts with it. And so that makes him almost an antagonist to some people, probably. Yeah.
He is. And that's what my main character is trying to figure out, is like, okay, what can I give this guy that he will want more than this promise that I made, so he will release me? And that's what he's trying to figure out, is like, what is this trade? Because right now it's very imbalanced. He doesn't, because the Lord of the Mountain would be giving up more than he would be received. He's receiving nothing if he lets him go. So he's like, I got to figure he's not there yet. He's only just circumstances of just, he had a son and he was keeping a secret, because he made those promises. He's indentured, and if you're indentured, you cannot own anything. Even if you have children, you cannot own them. You have no legal right to anything until you pay off your indenture. And there's the promises on top of that, because when he made those promises, he was a child. So like, okay, we have to take care of you. That's room and board. So we're going to indenture you. You have to pay that back. There's also these promises.
You're dug into more of a hole.
Yeah. So, and then he has a son now, and he wants custody of the little boy in the worst way possible. He doesn't want the boy to be taken away from him, and the little boy is going to be a mage too. And so now he's got reasons, and other people found out about the little boy in the last book in Chris Baker Reveal. That was book 9. So now in 10, he's like reeling from that. He's getting healing from his wounds, and dealing with the reality that, okay, I need to do something about my situation, because I can't keep just what I was doing for the last 9 books is not working anymore. I need to figure out something. So we're at the stage where he's trying to figure out something. So he's got to get better first, but at least he's making steps towards to get back on the path to do these other things. So
how many books do you have planned?
I mean, I have no idea how many books it's going to take to get him to break the curse. I just wanted to break the curse. How many did you
originally intend to write?
I thought it was going to be like, I figured we'd do it in like I don't know, like maybe 6 books, and then we got to book 6 and we're still trying to defeat the ancient evil that showed up in book 3, because he made a mistake and he lost his magic, and that was not in the outline. So we spent an entire book with no magic. I'm trying to figure out, how do I get his 2 magic gifts back when like he wasn't supposed to lose them. This was not in the outline. So then so I have just a bunch of random humans trying to fight the ancient evil, and they have no magic at all. And their most powerful like ally has no magic whatsoever. Like it was just book 5 it's a really good book, but it was really hard to write. So he spoiler, he got back one of the magics that he has access to at the end of that book. That's book 5. But it's not the useful magic that he uses all the time. It's the one that ignores him. It's the one that makes the promises binding. It's the one that gives him the power to break curses. And that one's just ignoring him because there's no curses, so it has nothing to do. So it's like, I'm not going to help you fight an ancient evil thing. It's not a curse. You need to do that on your own. So he's trying to dodge this. This is a giant monster. It's totally evil, and it's just destroying things. He can do nothing about it until he finally figures out in book 6 how to get his earth magic back, which is his strongest gift, the one he uses all the time. And then it's mad at him because he gave it up, and it's like it's quasi sentient. So it's like he's trying to get it back, but it's not sure it wants to go back to him because he gave it up. It's upset at him. So
that's great. I think that's very cool. And I love that you're willing to say my character is going to do this mistake and it's going to cost me 3 books.
I mean, it did. But it was like the fact that he lost it. Like the scene was so good. I was like, this was not in the outline, but it's so good. Like I have to go with it. It felt like true, like that was the truth for that character in that moment.
And when it happens, you just know.
Yeah,
you're like, that's gotta happen.
You're destroying all of my plans here, but it's so good. I have to let you. And then I was stuck with the problem of how do I get him out of this situation? How do we get a magic back? How do we get 2 magics back we weren't supposed to lose? How are you going to defeat this thing? Because it's entrenched by the time he's going to figure out how to get his magic back. Because he's a reluctant mage. He like never. In their world, magic is illegal. There's a whole stigma. And so he's very conflicted about his magic. And now he's lost it and it sucks. For the first time in his life, he has to get along like a human in a dangerous situation with no shields, no ability to do like anything. And he really hates it. And so it's like it becomes, he has to hit a tipping point. Does he hate enough to be like, wait a minute, maybe I do like being a mage. Maybe I want some magic. So we have to get him from he's gone, woo, relief, I'm normal now, to, oh shit, this is awful. Now I need, there's a lot of mental gymnastics that he goes through in there. But it's important because now he's not reluctant anymore. Now in book 10, he's like figuring out like, what does it mean to embrace the magic that I have? And to embrace this identity that I have.
Yeah, that's like the same thing with Wacław with his demonic element. Like there's a lot of darkness to this. And there's a cost to all of this, and he hates it for a long time. But then you realize what he can do with it, and you have this growth of, I hate this, to maybe I need this, to like falling apart because of it, and then realizing like how to control it and who he needs to be and things like that. And so yeah, that's a natural growth, I feel like, of a mage to be able to say, or like, especially if he's a reluctant mage, he doesn't want it, to be able to say like, wait a second, this is part of who I am.
Well, that's the realization that he came to after like the first 6 books, and was like, wait, this is who I am. And then it's
it's their choice.
Yes, that's it. It was because that's what he always felt from the beginning. It was not, he did not choose the magic. It chose him. And then through that 3-book, that trilogy where he lost it and had to get it back, it became a conscious choice. From that point on, it was like, I chose this path now. Maybe in the beginning I didn't, but I had an opportunity to get rid of it. I did not like this, and I chose to take it back. Like that it removed all reluctance. So now he's more interested in, whereas before he wasn't interested in like learning how to control it. He wasn't interested in any sort of learning. It was he thought of it as something outside of himself, sort of something that was put upon him, and now he thinks more of it. It is something inside him. It is part of him. It is a partner. He's like, it is a friend, and the magic as his mindset has changed, his magic has become more vocal. So he has conversations with it. Its feelings are hurt if it doesn't. There's some things that happen in the books after he chooses to get his magic back, and his magic gets mad at him because he made these promises to an outside person, and those promises bind his magic sometimes. It couldn't help him in a situation where he desperately needed help, but his magic got really mad about it. It was like, this is not cool, I was prevented from helping you because of a situation I don't understand, and you need to fix this. You want me? You need to fix this. It sort of gives him an ultimatum, and he gets some of the promises released because now he wants the magic. He's like, okay, I need to keep you happy because I need you and I want you around, and I don't like that you're upset at me. So it sort of changes their. It's just I didn't set out for the magic to be sentient. It just sort of happened.
And that's even better. Like, you have these things where you have like 20 pages written about your world, and all of a sudden you could create something else. Like, congrats, I've made things more complex for myself.
Yep. Let's throw away all the other stuff we were thinking about doing. This is cool. We're gonna. Yeah, I like the magic being kind of sentient because
that's fun.
You know, you can. It's a cool dynamic because then it can refuse to do something if it doesn't like it. You know, and then there's this question from is the magic really sentient? Is it really talking to him, or is he talking to himself? Is he imagining all of this? Did the mental gymnastics break something in his head? You know, like, is he crazy? Because that's his fear from the very first book, is that he thinks he's losing his mind because his magic was speaking to him in very short bursts, and he thought he was just going crazy, and now he's not so sure. Now he's like, well, maybe the magic is actually talking to me, because sometimes it's telling him things that he does not know and couldn't know. So yeah, that's the in books 10 and definitely 11 and 12, like that's going to be a really big thing. There's this because other people in book 10, other people hear the magic talk, and he's like, for him it's like big relief. Oh, okay. I'm not the only, you heard that. I'm not the only one hearing this. And it takes actions independent from him. He's out cold, and his magic is doing, it doesn't like his son is playing with this magical crystal that arrived. And it's like, I don't know what this is. I don't think the kid should be playing with it. I'm going to take it away from the child. And, you know, I'll put it aside somewhere and show my owner when he wakes up, because I don't know what's going on here. I need human intelligence to figure this out. And yeah, that was a fun scene to write. That's a spoiler. It's for the next book, for book 10. But it's just,
that's cool.
We'll see where this all goes.
Yep. That's what it is as an author. People are like, what is this going to go? Honestly, I don't know.
I mean, it's going to go wherever the characters let it go. That's
Yep. And with sentient magic, it only complicates it.
It does, but it's kind of fun because then you get in a situation like, well, will the magic let him do this thing?
Right.
So, and he has actually two magics. They're both sentient. They don't like each other, so they actually like fight with each other.
Yeah, fire on one shoulder and earth on the other, or something like that.
There's the earth magic, and then there's the curse breaking gift.
Oh yeah, curse. Oh yeah.
But the curse breaking gift is so I based it on light. So earth magic is green, but if you combine if you take like a prism and you spit it to the sunlight, and which looks white, and you split it, there's all the different colors. So the curse breaking magic is white. So it encompasses all other magic. So you can break curses that are not made with earth magic. It would be stronger for him to break one that was made with some kind of earth magic, because that is his other gift. But he can break a curse that any mage created, even if they're a different elemental power. It doesn't matter. Even if it's one that's opposed to him, like water magic. His earth magic hates water. There's a whole big thing with that. It does not like water. And because water wears away stones, and his magic is particularly like focused upon like stone magic. So yeah, so it's just stuff like that. So the white magic can actually bind his earth magic, and that's what happens. And that was what happened in book 9, because he had promised to obey not just Lord of the Mountain, but the Lord of the Mountain passed that promise on to other people, because Lord of the Mountain's not always there. He's a politician. He's off and off the capital, but there are lesser people that he wants him to serve, like the commander of the Rangers. So he had to promise to obey those other people as well. And that person, the commander of the Rangers, told him, because he didn't know what to do with this 15-year-old mage with magic that's out of control. So he just made him promise, because he has to obey the commander of the Rangers, because that promise was passed on to him. The commander of the Rangers said to him, look, I want you to stay out of sight. Don't use your magic. Just don't do anything. Figure out what normal is and just do that. And so he is bound to that. So he got into a situation where he would be very, very visible if he was working this magic, but he was trying to stop this villain from his past who had kidnapped his son. and he got into such, and he also had promised to obey that villain because that villain was the orphan master, and he was an orphan, and he had to live under his rule for many years. So he was stuck in a situation where he could not disobey the orphan master, who was giving him orders and telling him to tear down the underground city. So he started doing that. But there was the internal conflict because his white magic was like, whoa, we can't do this because we promised the commander of the Rangers we would stay out of sight and not use our magic unless we absolutely have to and pretend to be normal. And this is not normal what we are doing now, you know? So there was this whole conflict, and his earth magic could not break free of things because that white magic is the binder of all those promises. So it was forcing it to do what the orphan master told it to do. And it was really, it gives him a thorough tongue lashing in book 10 for that. It's very angry about that. It does not understand why it had to obey someone else. So I'm going to be explaining it well. It's complicated, but
that's okay.
It's fun to
Complexity
write.
is part of fantasy, and it's a good element of it. But it's a line to like toe, and you're like, you need enough things to make it cool and unique.
Yes.
But you also don't want to make it too complex. I was aware. I know an author who explained it with like tokens, and you say I think it was, I don't remember if it was Sanderson or someone else, but so you have a couple number of tokens you can spend with every reader. I know that I spent a couple on Wacław's name from the immediate beginning. And so it's like, how much other tokens do I spend on certain magic things? And so you have that same thing with sentient magic, or like the different types of magic, the curses versus the other things.
But this all, you get introduced to it slowly across. Like
I
just finished book 10. Yeah, so like what I've been just giving out spoilers like crazy across the 10 books that I've written in the series. But yeah, when you get introduced to it, like he didn't even know he has a second magic. He knows about the earth magic. He uses it. It's like it's like, like your vision and your hearing. It's just so much a part of you. Like it's extra senses that you can't turn them off. They're always there. He's always aware of the magic and what it is sensing. So it's very prevalent. And that's all that you see in the first book. And then partway through it, the second one shows up when he's in water, which is earth magic hates. So it hides deep within him. And he's like, what is this other thing it shows up? And he is like, what is this? And has no frame of reference for it, and is like, he's like, whatever. And then it sort of goes back to being dormant, and he's like, okay, we've got this other thing in here, I don't know what it is, and it doesn't seem to do anything. So he's like, I'm just gonna ignore it. I'm going crazy, I'm losing my mind, this is just another symptom of it. And it slowly progresses, and it's mostly when he has, there's certain instances where it comes out across the books, and he starts to get a little bit more of an idea of what this thing is. And of course, now in book 10, it's sort of talking to him. He's not happy about that. One, talkative magic is one thing. Two is too much in his opinion. So especially when they start arguing, and he's like, well, do I stop them from arguing? Do I sit here and watch? Like, I'm not sure what to do in this situation.
I love that.
Yeah, he's also like injured, so he's like laying there like in pain, and like he's like, I don't have the spoons to deal with this. It's a wild scene. I'm spoiling the book that I'm going to publish, but it's okay.
People get rewarded for listening this far into the interview.
That's true. Like we're quite. I have to sign off soon because it's getting kind of late, and I have work in the morning.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. So, do you have any last words?
I think I had my last words, but I'm excited for having my book in SPFBO and just being a part of that competition and seeing how everything goes. And just
I was going to ask that. That was one of my questions because I thought you were one of the SPFBO authors. I am as well. So root for both of our books.
Cool. Which group are you in?
I don't remember. I think his name is I don't remember actually. It's not one of the blogs. It's one of the it's not one of the blogs with the fun names. It's a person. I think Philip. Maybe.
Okay. I'm in the Queen's Book Asylum, Queen's Book Asylum, I think.
Yeah.
I know my reviewer is Bjorn.
Some of them have such cool names. I don't know much about him. I'm trying to look into anything.
I've learned a lot about some of these groups, even just the ones that I'm not in, just because I was like, oh, cool, this exists. I didn't realize that. So.
Yeah, I haven't seen anything, so I'm assuming that he hasn't cut any books yet.
Oh, yeah, I don't know. I just follow what's going on Twitter, so I haven't seen anyone cut yet. So
yeah, I don't really follow it on Twitter. I'm not really a Twitter person.
You're probably better off for not doing it on Twitter. But that's where I follow it.
Yeah, for all those who are listening, SPFBO is the self-published fantasy blog off, and this year is number 9. 300 books can enter. 10 will advance to semifinals. 1 will be crowned the winner of SPFBO 9 for 2023. And we hope you're cheering on Cursebreaker Enchanted, which is my baby, and A Dagger in the Wind, which is your baby.
Yep. And yeah, have you done it before?
No. I only found out about it last year, so I
was too late last year. I saw it, and then it filled up so quickly that I was like, oh.
Yeah, I found out about it like after it already started, and I was like, "What is this thing?" And so this year, I decided to try and stick it in and see what happens. Just out of curiosity, I've never entered any book award before. Probably should have. I love Cursebreaker Enchanted. It's my baby.
Yeah, it's a totally different style than a lot of them too. So it's fun. I'm planning to with my next series. I should have my next book out of that first series, the next series next year. So I'm planning to do it again next year, no matter what happens with this one.
I have 5 series, so I was like, do I put the next book one in next year?
I guess doesn't matter how old it is too.
Yeah. I'm just trying to think of like the strongest candidate, because I think the strongest candidate was Cursebreaker Enchanted. It is traditional epic fantasy, very much in the it started out very much in the Tolkien sort of thing, but obviously written in a modern language. But it's drifted pretty darn far from Tolkien, in a good way. I have a much more structured magical system than his, which was like words of encouragement. I mean, we didn't really see much magic in any of the Lord of the Rings, or even really in the Silmarillion.
I would say I'm very far prose away from talking.
Oh, I love it. I'm
much more direct. I cannot do. I try to describe things as much as possible, but sometimes I'm like, I'm not going to spend 3 pages.
Yeah, I don't either. I have no patience for description, really. I just what I loved about Tolkien is the deep lore. How like you dig and there's layers upon layers upon layers, and it's that I thought was very cool. So that was my interest in it. And I didn't think I could create something like that, but now 20 books in, I realize that like I have layers upon layers upon layers.
Well, 20 books you've written basically more than he ever did in his world. So
that's true. But our time has come to an end, and so thank you, Brendan Noble, and I am your indie fantasy author, Melinda Kucsera. If you want to check out Shards for His Gift, which is book 10 of the Cursebreaker series, if you want to get your hands on it before anybody else, join my Patreon and support me and help me to get more books out to you faster, and you will get a copy of Shards for His Gift, and you'll get thanked in it as well before anyone else. I am just finished the line edits for it, and I'll be sending it off to a proofreader hopefully in the next couple of days. So it's pretty close to done, and I've got about half of like a sequel that wasn't supposed to exist. We were supposed to do Joust next, but the characters decided that we were going to chase dragons, so we're chasing dragons in the sequel.
Always chase dragons.
I mean, we'll see what happens to Jerlo's obsession after the dragon chasing incident. Thank you so much.